Hello and welcome to First Watch Rewatch. I am Sara Shea.
And I am Tom Duncan.
And we are here diving into the first season of The West Wing. Not the whole season, this episode, but we're covering 3 episodes, episodes 16, 17, and 18. Pretty sure that's the ones we're covering, right?
That is correct. We have covered up to this point episodes 1 through 15. In the first 5 episodes that we've done, we're doing 3 episodes per segment.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's a chunk of episodes that we're doing at any one individual time. We'll be covering next week then 19, 20, and 21, finishing up the week after with our finale on episode 22.
Perfect.
Which I already need to caution you. I have been wrong about so many things, like looking forward into the past, because I have not sat down and literally watched through this, like the entire season, the entire second season, in probably 5-6 years at least.
Okay.
And so there are things like in this chunk of episodes in 16, 17, and 18, you would ask me whether or not they ever give you a true up or down on the confirmation of Roberto Mendoza. And I said, I don't remember. I don't think they do. And then clearly they start off episode 18 with doing that. So I will let you know, I went through and I watched through the rest of this season because there was a gap between when we last recorded and now, just to make sure I don't fuck up that badly again.
Okay.
But all of that is to say, knowing how this season ends, and I knew how it ended then, you are not allowed to watch past episode 22. So when we get there...
Into the second season, you mean?
Correct.
Okay.
You have to stop, because that is going to be my satisfaction.
Thanks, Barry Lyndon. So, right. So, again, the premise of this show is that you've watched this. So this is a rewatch for you.
Correct.
This is a first watch for me. And so everything is, I'm taking it as it comes, and then you get to lord it over me about how smart and cute you are. And then I just get to be like, I'm reacting to everything, and I get to have big feelings.
Yeah, I get to basically play God because I'm omniscient, and I get to have the knowledge of what comes next while you get to kind of guess.
Right.
And I lead you in certain directions. But also I get to do my little political rantings because this is a fairly political show.
Correct. Right. And then our disclaimer that you can say whatever you want related to politics, and
That's not
true.
I'm still not going to be for school vouchers.
Oh, man. Y'all, if you are listening to this episode and you haven't figured out by now that Tom and I are the dorkiest dorks who have ever dorked, and that we will just go off on a tangent about whatever it is that we're talking... Yeah.
It's within reason. This comes up in this tranche of episodes.
It 100% does, and yet I still feel like even if we weren't talking about it just because it's in one of these episodes, that somehow we would figure out how to have that in a normal conversation that we would be having just like on a random Thursday or whatever.
Is that because I'm a flaming socialist liberal and you're a school teacher?
Potentially.
Public school teacher. I suppose I should have put that.
Teacher.
Yeah, that caveat in there, but
right.
Yeah.
I am a public school teacher. Yes.
Yeah,
and even before we started recording, I was complaining about public education and how I don't get to have a lot of control over what is going on. So
it's ultimately why I only lasted about a full semester, maybe a little bit more in the education program.
Is that something you actually consider doing?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I didn't know that. Have you told me that before? Did I forget?
I don't know if I actually have. I know I've told someone, but yeah, at first when I went to college, I was going to be a history professor, but I didn't want to write a dissertation.
Oh.
So then I bumped down and I was going to be a high school history teacher and realized I didn't really like the structure of the public education system and constantly about, there's the philosophy of how you teach. And I'm like, this is so full of shit. I mean, I'm sorry for me to get on my little soapbox here, but I'm eventually going to. This is just non-political. This is just the public education system. The amount of things that they require that you be updated on and, early childhood behavioral, and I find most of that to be just utter bullshit. I think people that are able to relate information to other people is an inherent skill that you can polish, and you can even make people who are not really good at it okay. But at the end of the day, your ability to relate that information is just there or it's not. And I know this may be offensive to some, especially in this particular field. I'm sorry, that's how I felt about it, which is I know because I tutored a bunch of kids in high school when they were all failing algebra because we had a shit teacher just about every year. And I was able to basically teach myself and then teach other people that I could have taught. And I didn't need to go through 17,000 early childhood development and philosophy things here, there, and other things. You don't need to make teachers into these monoliths of contained wisdom. They don't have to be philosophers, psychologists, therapists, police officers, and all of these other things. We expect them to do way too much, just like we do the police or the fire department. Public officials need to have a very contained job, and they are not necessarily responsible for all of the various bullshit with your children. Sometimes it's on the parents, and we don't do that enough. So, moving on, I think we should probably start with episode 16.
I'm not expressing an opinion whatsoever.
Yes, it's...
I'm not.
Yeah, I know. You're going to come up here and try and run my school board campaign.
I will say this. Depending on what level you're teaching, the adolescent psychology classes that I had to take when I was getting my master's, I actually think is important for you to understand like childhood development in the different stages. Particularly when you're working with teenagers, because there are lots of assumptions that you make about what's going on in a teenage brain. And so I found that to be very helpful, and it really informed me going, oh, so that's why I was doing what I was doing when I was that age, all of that type of stuff. But the problem is that teaching methodology is one thing, teaching philosophy is another. And then when you say to teachers, great, now it is time for you to go teach using the skills that we have taught you and that they perfect while they're in their training programs.
Sure.
And then the second that you start teaching, they say, actually, everything that you were just taught is obsolete. And now we're going to keep telling you new things to do every single year. And then it's the same things, but they just give it different names, and they keep regurgitating it over and over and over again. And they don't trust people who are professionals to just do their jobs.
So this is my problem with the current small L liberal environment. Liberalism as a concept has moved the ball so far forward that we have to put in extra process and strictures that make things relatively impossible. Some of the best teachers came out of the 2-year colleges in the 60s and 70s. They didn't have to go through 17,000 hoops and do constant CLEs and all of this other crap. And they learned a lot more on the job. If you wanted to say, okay, we're going to give you a crash course for 2 years in learning something, especially with the shortage of teachers that we have, go through that stuff. And then we're going to give you some on-the-job training and mentorship programs through the school systems. That, to me, is a much more equitable system. And it's the same complaint I have about lawyers or law school, is complete and utter crap. You barely learn anything that's applicable to the teaching of law. Not to mention, most of the professors are academics who have never actually practiced. So they're teaching you stuff that it's going to apply to what you're going to do someday. And yet, at the same time, I literally had a conversation with one of my professors last week who has never practiced law at all. And I said, and she's trying to tell me that you need to know how to recite chapter and verse from particular things and just pull them out of the back of your mind. I said, maybe sometimes in like a trial setting or a hearing setting, yes, you will have to quote chapter and verse. But most of the time, you know which ones you're going to pull out so you can prepare in advance. And it's about being able to find the answer more than it is being able to remember and regurgitate. So the difference of me knowing 46 cases that we've covered over 15 weeks to take your final exam and not giving us any materials, it's a completely closed book, closed note test, and we're supposed to do case illustrations distinguishing and differentiating between various different sets of facts. You're expecting me to be able to regurgitate all that, and they don't require that on the bar exam. But that's going to be on your final. Okay, great. And you're inflexible on this? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, again, tell me how it is when I'm practicing more law per day than you have ever done, how it is in the real world. But anyway, soapboxes, we need to move on. We're already 11 minutes in. I think I've done 3 of them already.
Okay. Let's move on. So, episode 16. Okay, it is called 20 Hours in LA. It is, directed by Alan Taylor, written solely by Aaron Sorkin, aired on February 23rd, 2000. So here is the synopsis. At 3 a.m. aboard Air Force One, President Bartlett, Josh, Toby, CJ, Donna, Zoe, Charlie, and others, so basically everybody, okay, leave Andrews Air Force Base for a grueling 24-hour trip to Los Angeles. That makes it sound like the trip itself is going to take 24 hours. That is not what it means. Ambiguous sentences, they're called amphiboles. The president expresses concern about a pending 50-50 vote on a Senate bill about a tax credit for the production of ethanol as a fuel, and meets Gina Toscano, the Secret Service agent assigned to Zoe. The agenda filling the day and evening includes a debate on a proposed amendment to the Constitution to prohibit burning the national flag, a town hall meeting on school vouchers, and a celebrity-packed fundraising dinner at the home of Ted Marcus, the president of a film studio. Ted learns that a conservative congressman has introduced a bill in the House to ban gays from the armed forces, and that the White House does not actively oppose the bill. So Marcus threatens to cancel the fundraising event. Josh arranges 10 minutes for Marcus and the president alone, and the party proceeds. Joey Lucas attends and explains some interesting numbers to Josh, Sam, Toby, and CJ. Leo, back in Washington, asks the vice president to break the tie in the Senate in favor of the bill, but the vice president prefers not to do so because of personal, political, and ideological reasons. However, Sam and Leo arrange for 3 reluctant senators to vote nay, thus letting the vice president off the hook. And of course, there are 2 notable guest stars, Jay Leno and David Hasselhoff, playing themselves as guests at the fundraising party. I'm so apologize for my Duncan flubs.
Wow. That, talk about ambiguous.
There's nothing ambiguous about that.
Well, not to mention the fact that Dana's done a clean read 2 weeks in a row.
Good. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
This is my first time reading the synopsis, and I got nervous. I have to do it twice more this episode, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah. Okay.
So one of the first notable things about this, as we've mentioned multiple times throughout, it's an Aaron Sorkin only written episode, which you have highlighted you think are better because they appeal to a certain value set. They have more subtlety. They're doing a little bit more than just the basic plot. There's a little bit more story to it. And in this particular one, you're talking about this entire day's worth of trip. And very early on, it's teased that Bartlett should stay at the hotel. He should try to sleep because he can't sleep on the plane. Then he talks to multiple people throughout the course of the day. He's clearly agitated, worked up. He can't really rest at all. And the end of the episode ends with him being unable to sleep, which is obviously a signal of something bigger. But I think Sorkin focuses so much on the vulnerability of particular characters. And so I feel like a lot of that comes through in here. He has that conversation with Ted Marcus, Bob Balaban, in this particular episode about how he's just not enjoying the process of being president. That's going to lead into our next tranche of episodes, and there's going to be a direct address of how things are going for particular people. But I think the job, more than anything, and I think that this show really highlights that, the stress of being in this position. We can think about it, we can theorize what it is, and we talk about presidents and how they've aged in a particular term. I mean, Obama went from this fairly spry, young-looking guy to being kind of in his late 50s, kind of old-looking by the time he was done. He wasn't actually in his late 50s, and you could just see the graying on him, the extra wrinkles, the lines, everything that was there, and it takes a toll on a young man. So then we, of course, elect two 70-year-olds consecutively to the office and wonder why the job is having such a detriment to each of their healths.
Right. I think when I think about Obama's terms and that he served 2 consecutive terms, so it's almost 10 years, right? So serving as much as you can is capped at 8 years. And so when you're talking almost a decade, so much happens in a decade. If any of us were to look at pictures of ourselves 10 years ago and the massive amounts of shifts that happen in the world around us, even when we're not involved in trying to run any of it, let alone the physical changes, all of those types of things. And Obama was relatively young compared to his predecessors. And yes, we keep electing men who are older and older and older. And so I think the wear and tear doesn't show as in an as obvious of a way with them. They're just like always old. But then people are now talking about, are they capable of doing their jobs, right? Are they senile? All of these things. And the weirdness too of having a split term like President Trump, right? Served 4 years, off 4 years, served another. So, or wait, off 8,
yes,
8 years. Yeah. So how bizarre all of that is. And this episode shows in a different way how chaotic everybody's jobs are. We've obviously seen how frenetic everything is when they are in the White House. And you've pointed out multiple times, sort of the point is to show all of the things that can happen in a single day. And then when you are taking the time to travel all the way across the country, that you're doing it only for 24 hours. So how much can you pack in 24 hours? Because they literally cannot take more time to extend the trip. And then also you have a president who doesn't want to extend the time. He literally says, I want to be back home. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. So I know for myself, the times that I have traveled across the country have been absolutely exhausting, even when all I'm doing and all I'm expected to do is just travel and then get to wherever I'm going, right? Particularly when I've traveled to Washington, D.C. and I'm like, yep, that took a whole day. I'm out. I literally can't function. So then to think that they're going to continually keep running through all of these things, and that the events that they are going to are not just picture opportunities, right? They're not just smiling and waving. There's actual things that need to be happening, which ups the stakes. And then, of course, we also learn officially
that there's an epidemic of flag burning.
Oh, well, there's that. But also I was going to say that Joey and Charlie are officially together, and that's...
Are they?
He says, you've given me all of these tips on how to be a good boyfriend. They talk about that on the
Charlie
plane.
and Zoe. You you said Joey, and so I got Joey and
Josh. Cross
yes.
purposes. But she's in bed with John Delancey, better known as Q from Star Trek The Next Generation. I kind of lost my mind when I saw him. And so he's this weird pollster who actually says to the president, everybody sees you as a wimp because, yes, there is this spate of flag burning all over the place because this was a time when that was something that was kind of a hot button issue at the time. Did you ever have a conversation with your parents about flag burning or anything like that?
Once.
Okay, so I distinctly remember my dad asking me at dinner one time, or me and my brother, and asking, do you think people should be allowed to burn the flag? And I got real mad. And I was like, no, that's terrible. How could they do that, right? I'm a kid or fairly young, freaking out about it. And he said, okay, all right, great. So if we think that that's wrong and that's bad and we're going to stop that, then what are some other things that we're also going to prevent people from doing? Can we prevent people from saying certain things and et cetera, et cetera? And then the logic bore itself out to be like, oh, right, as a child, I should not be in favor of banning or censoring really anything, right?
Yeah, I fully understand and appreciate Texas v. Johnson and the Supreme Court's upholding of the right to flag burn, and I don't think it's requiring of a national amendment to do it. But I also find this to be rather hypocritical because the people that are so anti-flag burning are the first ones to throw it up on fucking everything. On the back of their Chevy truck, on a pair of underpants that they're strapping to their ass. I don't need to see a flag thong anywhere. So if you want to do a constitutional amendment to remove the flag from being a symbol that is distressed, then it cannot be a part of anything. You cannot use it in political ads. You cannot use it as like a rally around effect. And I definitely don't want to see the current sitting president literally humping a flagpole.
Yes.
You do realize these are unedited, right?
Yes. Just dead air while I gesticulate wildly. So nobody's going to know what's happening unless they actually watch the video. So if you are here watching,
which is on YouTube, yeah.
Yes, exactly. You know what? Today has just told me that, like, just throwing caution to the wind, one day only, I'm just going to hump the flagpole, maybe, just a little bit.
Just don't lick it while it's January in Wisconsin?
No, but it's April in Las Vegas and it's hot here.
Then also still don't lick it because you'll probably get third-degree burns.
That's also true. Yeah, so I think that if we need to hold the flag to this sacred ideal where it should not be besmirched, yes, it also should not appear on swimming garments or anything that would be near
beer
genitalia
cans.
Or beer cans. Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, what does the flag have to do with drinking a beer?
Merca? Isn't that...
There you go.
That's literally it, right? I mean...
Mom, apple pie, and Bud Light?
Okay, but... Oh, God, think about... Oh, man. Think about, like, Super Bowl ads, right? Mm-hmm. And how those are essentially... They're almost like Patriot ads. I was going to say political ads. But they really are, like, everything is super American. Especially, I would say, like, more than 20 years ago, right? So you would have, like, the Budweiser ads with the Clydesdale horses and they're running in slow motion. What do the Clydesdales have to do with beer either? But we associate it and because that feels American, right? That's an American beer,
okay,
so on and so forth.
The Clydesdales I can get because that's like part of a brand. It's an iconography. Yeah. It's a brand identification. That's fine. But what I'm saying is if you want to use the flag, fine. But you can't argue in one breath that we shouldn't be able to burn it and desecrate it in all these other various ways.
Right.
I'm just saying be consistent across the board.
No, I 100% agree with you. Absolutely. Right. If you can't burn the flag, then you cannot use it for all of these other things, because now it has become something else.
It's the same argument. It's the same argument I have about Christmas movies. I don't care whether you think Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not, but if you don't, you also can't argue to me that It's a Wonderful Life is, because they have the same level of attachment to Christmas, other than the fact that you maybe watched it as a kid and so then it's more closely associated. But then you can't crap on somebody else who thinks that it is, or that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, because maybe their family was really fucked up and watched it every Christmas when they were growing up. I don't know. Maybe that was their thing.
I mean, it happens during Christmas, so that's where people's arguments are, right?
I'm just asking for argument consistency. That's it.
No, I get it. So then here's my other question. What do you think of the Pledge of Allegiance?
I protested in high school. I sat because it was in the middle of the war, and I was protesting, and I had people that were upset with me.
Do you think that... Okay,
it's an unnecessary thing. Why... Okay, first off, and this is a subject we're going to be coming up on here very soon, and I think birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment, because it's very explicit in the drafting of that amendment, will be upheld. I would have a hard time thinking that even this Supreme Court would try and invent some new math to try and figure that out. But I think that, especially now as I'm thinking going into a model constitutional convention conference that I'm going to be going to here next month.
That's really hot, by the way. Super sexy. Sorry.
I know, right? As I'm going into that, I'm thinking, how do you actually define citizenship? Mm-hmm. For most people, it's, I was born here, or I live here, or I'm registered to vote. But nobody has actually, like, truly considered what it is to be a citizen. Like, what are the important factors? What are the definitions? And are you a citizen while you're locked up? Right. I mean, you've clearly lost certain freedoms, but like all of this thing comes into play, and I don't think we've ever defined it, because we are also one of the few liberal democracies, small L liberal democracies, that does not actually have the right to vote enshrined in law.
Correct. Well, and we don't have like a list of things that you have to do when you are a citizen, right? We don't have like required military service, or you need to do XYZ. Bringing up the, if you're incarcerated, are you a citizen? I've literally never thought about that before. That gives me pause. Yeah. So, and then this debate, right, on people voting, whether or not we should be asking them for ID. What does an ID prove? It literally would be saying your name. It doesn't actually necessarily prove that you are a citizen or not. So then what are all of these different components?
Immigrants who are not full citizens have Social Security cards and numbers.
Yep.
Because they're working here.
Yep. Most
of them, whether we'd like to admit that or not. Right. So I wonder to a degree, what is exactly citizenship in this country, and how would it be apportioned? Because these are the things that I think about on a daily basis, because I'm an Uber nerd.
Such a cute Uber nerd. Yes. So when we're talking about the Pledge of Allegiance, then, right? So my school district just like reinstated us having to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day. We more or less stopped it. I want to say kind of coincided with COVID, and when we were all at home, and then when we came back, we just kind of didn't start it again, or you were like supposed to do it by yourself. Before that, we were doing it on like morning announcements or whatever, and kids could choose to do it or not. And so
if we're going to bring back the Pledge of Allegiance, I think we need to do it with the original salute.
Okay. Why?
Because then I want to really just troll everybody by doing that.
Okay.
You are aware that the Pledge of Allegiance was said with the hand open, and it looked like a Nazi salute, so we changed it during World War II to the hand of the heart.
Right. Okay.
I find it to be tedious. All these, like, shows of patriotism. It doesn't actually express anything except being like a moniker. It's like wearing the flag pin on your lapel. Does that make you more of an American than anybody else? I would say just as much your exercising of your rights to protest is as American as anything else. This entire country was founded on protest. So, but again, what does it mean to be an American?
Sure.
That's what I'm coming back to is I find all of this to be extremely performative, just like we constantly are having this conversation now of performative masculinity. We do all these showy things to thump our chest and I'm a real man because I drink Bud Light and I sit on my truck. Okay, I mean, if that's what you think being a man is, great. I might have something else, but you definitely cannot judge me for what I think masculinity is, especially in lieu of this conversation where we're having where it lacks a definition and certain factors to know what masculinity is right now until we've had that actual cultural conversation.
And you know what? There's the same sort of thing that you can apply to womanhood, right? What is it? There's performative women or femininity stuff, right? You have to wear dresses and have babies and do all of these things. So if you aren't falling into that, if you are choosing not to have children, are you a woman because you haven't performed your biological duty? All of those things. I mean, it just keeps rolling out and rolling out and rolling out.
I accept all of those things. I will refrain from commenting on them because I don't feel it's a conversation that I particularly can add to.
Right. And I'm not trying to necessarily start a conversation. I'm just like piggybacking off of.
I get what you're saying. I agree with you. And that's as far as I could go because what does my opinion necessarily matter on that? Like I can speak to masculinity. I can speak to an Americanism. I can't speak to what it's like to be a woman. I just can't. Never really thought about it. I just thank my lucky stars daily that I'm a man. It's so much simpler.
It truly is. It truly is. I remember distinctly growing up and saying, oh, God, I would love to be a boy just because it would be easier. Not because I actually wanted to be a boy, but just because I didn't want to have to deal with shit.
All the power to you, ladies. I mean, it is so much harder being you than it is me. I mean, I have my shit. I'm not saying I don't. But my life would be twice as hard, if not more, if I had lady parts.
Yeah. So let's get back to the show.
Okay, so you were commenting specifically on Zoe and Charlie.
Yeah, so Zoe and Charlie are
you did it again there.
I did. President's daughter and Charlie are officially together. So that felt like all of a sudden a huge leap forward because I think the last time was Charlie asking permission. So that was kind of fun to see. I still think that Zoe as a character is so uninteresting, and her only thing right now is her being defined by this relationship with Charlie. Charlie is way more interesting than she is in a lot of different ways. So
it's a criticism that's often levied at Aaron Sorkin's work that he does not know how to write interesting female characters. I don't think that holds up completely across all of his work. In a lot of his movies, I can see it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I necessarily see that in this show particularly because Donna, because CJ, because Mrs. Bartlett, I find to be actually fairly interesting characters. Yeah, but you're right. The Zoe character is very one note most of the time.
Yeah. So I'm not very excited about their relationship because we also know that I like the smooching and all of that type of stuff. So this I was like, okay, great. This is another one of the episodes that has a ton going on. So how should we break this down in terms of approach? Because
ethanol tax credit. We'll start there.
Okay.
Pro or against?
I don't think I know or understand enough to actually take a position.
Okay, then I will make this short. I am against because it's incredibly stupid and inefficient.
Okay.
And if that means I lose the Iowa caucuses, I will live with that reality.
Okay.
Frankly, we overproduce corn anyway because we put it in so much shit as it is for all the syrups and other stuff and all of the animal feed. Like, we could probably decrease our corn consumption and dial it back and actually be a healthier society overall. And we certainly don't need to depend on it for oil, especially with how much we're producing as a country anyway, that the byproducts of it really are not there. And we're just basically trying to subsidize an entire industry to continue to limp along, kind of like the coal industry, because we don't want to piss off certain rural jobs. But we're basically lying to them instead of helping them face the reality of what their situation is and move on.
Yeah, okay.
Jobs are changing. Yeah. My profession's about to be completely upheavaled, or in an upheaval. I did that incorrectly. But regardless. Uphooved. Okay. But you know what I'm saying. With AI coming, a lot of white-collar jobs are going to be completely upended from what they currently are doing and in their capacity. Right. And we have to figure out how to use new machines to curb our efficiency. Because up until this point, other than maybe the use of a computer, these industries have basically been the same for 150 years. So, yeah. But we have to move on. We have to retrain. We have to repurpose. And it doesn't pay to lie to people and keep them in something that's not going to actually be for their benefit, when I know it's scary, I know it's going to be hard, but you need to be able to help people find an acceptance and move on, because the world has changed and evolved, and not all the same jobs. It's the same issue I have with trying to bring our country into manufacturing jobs. Even when we had them available and there wasn't a lot of machination that was overtaking certain jobs, I just wonder how many people really wanted to do hard manual labor. And so we built a service level of economy, and now that's what we have. And somehow we want to bring back the old days where people were in giant assembly lines at Ford. And it just doesn't really work that way anymore. So I'd rather have free trade and minimum tariffs and help people retrain into stuff that's a little bit better paying and has some capacity. That being said, I also think unions should be stronger in some of those service sector union positions, instead of getting the right to work stuff that we have in a lot of these red states where a lot of stuff is being located. But yet again, I'm showing my liberalism.
You should cover that up just a little bit.
Nah.
I'm kidding.
I like showing my ass.
Okay, so yeah, ethanol, I was just kind of like, I don't
it's fine. Yeah, it's one of those like uber nerd positions, and frankly, the only reason it's mattered is because Iowa was the first state for presidential primaries, basically because of the caucuses. Now anymore, because Iowa's no longer going to go first, it has zero bearing on anything. It is a debate that is very dated. So, okay, we can move past that one, other than to say that the vice president kind of getting a win and not being put out in a tough position as we continue to develop that weird relationship between the two of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this felt real weird at that conversation between Leo and the VP.
And I will just say, we'll go back to previous comments we made just so we can move the ball forward here. Mm-hmm. This relationship is strained in a way that you would think political rivals as vice president and president would be more strained, especially because they were both the two front runners for the ticket, whereas a lot of the more recent picks for vice presidential nominations are people who are not direct political rivals, and so then they could have a better working relationship. Yeah. Because the person behind them wasn't necessarily immediately going to run for president.
Right. This is more like second place.
Right.
Rather
all right.
Than, yeah.
The only other thing that, I guess, other than, I mean, we could cover the Ted Marcus stuff, but I don't really know if it's necessary in most of this, especially with how far the country has moved on the issue. And even though we keep talking about gays in the military and all this other stuff, and that will come up again, you know, again, we're so far past that as a country that I don't know if it bothers us to do a whole lot. So I will spend my last drop of energy on this episode on the Joey Lucas and Josh storyline. So,
Yes.
go ahead.
Oh, so cute. So cute. I actually thought it was pretty cute that Donna says, like, hey, there's clearly something going on between you two, and you need to follow up on this. And Josh is just like, what? And then
Gather ye rosebuds.
Right? Okay. And she's quoting poetry to him, right? And says, go for it. And so he goes for it, and oops, catches her essentially with this slime ball. Okay. Polster, who's like super pro, is he pro burning of the flag or pro banning?
He wants them to lead the charge by suggesting the amendment themselves and taking a ultra conservative position.
Right. So ban the burning, right?
Which is just bad pollster positions. Like nobody in their right mind would ever do this. You'd be basically drummed out, especially in a modern sense.
Right, but his statement is, you're going to win if you take this position. Anyway, he's a slime ball, and Joey is literally in bed with him. Marlee Matlin is she's great. I really like this character. She's super, super smart. Her flirting with Josh and him flirting back is really cute. And then the reveal that Q is in her bed just stabbed me in the heart. No, Josh, no. And he's just like, oh, yeah.
This will be something that we'll come back around to in the next tranche of episodes. So put a pin in that, and we'll revisit here shortly. But I'm glad that you like that relationship, much in the same way that you've warmed to the CJ Danny thing, and we have more to discuss on there. So anything further that you would like to discuss here before we move on?
Just really quickly on the banning gays in the military, that was a really hot button issue at the time too. I believe we're still in the don't ask, don't tell era with Clinton. So
that only got repealed in like 2012. So the entire show is under that guise. And frankly, don't ask, don't tell was only a few years old at this point. Because I think it was only mid-Clinton administration, and we're in early 2000.
Right, exactly. Who gets into the argument? Oh, okay. The argument about school vouchers ends up being between Sam and Mallory, right?
That's a couple episodes ahead.
Is it?
Yes, that's in episode 18.
But it is about school vouchers, right?
It says there's a town hall meeting on school vouchers. I don't really remember that much of that. I remember their lunch with the guacamole made in front of them, but...
Yes. Okay. Never mind then. Because, you're right. I just looked. It is 2 episodes later, and it's so dumb. Yep. And Bob Balaban, I don't think I've ever seen him play a non-villainous character.
Yes, you have.
When?
He is the very nervous boy who gets pulled into the bathroom by John Voight in Midnight Cowboy. That was his first acting role.
Shut up, really?
Yep.
I've seen that movie so many times. No way. No way.
Mm-hmm.
Then that would be where I remember him from without realizing it. Oh.
Brain broken. I'll let you look that up after the fact, because I'm sure if you didn't realize it, William may not have realized it.
That's true. Okay. Anyway, all right, so that's not a villainous character, but most of the stuff that I remember him in, he's kind of playing a slime ball.
I often remember him as like dopey assistants, but maybe that's just a projection. I can't remember where exactly, but he's often like a side character as opposed to anything where he's a major dick, kind of like this was.
Well, I mean, he's in the Christopher Guest movies.
That would be why I haven't seen many of those.
Okay. All right, I gotta stop looking. I'll look at that later.
All right,
okay.
episode 17.
Yes, episode 17, called The White House Pro-Am, directed by Ken Olin, written by Lawrence O'Donnell Jr. and Paul Redford and Aaron Sorkin. It aired on March 22nd, 2000. So here we go.
Which is almost a month after the previous episode, so there's
Correct.
like a gap in there.
Huge gap.
Yeah.
It is exactly a month. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. The First Lady appears on television on behalf of the Children's Crusade to raise awareness about child slavery, but her efforts are soon overshadowed when the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors dies. Leo, to settle the uncertainty in the investment markets, urges the president to announce a successor, but the president decides to take some time to make sure, although, according to a leak, the First Lady has expressed her preference, who also happens to be a former boyfriend. What a horrible run-on sentence. Josh and Toby...
You picked to read the Wikipedia summaries. I can't help that.
You read them too. Josh and Toby court additional votes in the Congress to run up the score on the vote on a global trade agreement, and a congresswoman gives Sam a courtesy advance notice of a forthcoming announcement about her rider on the exploitation of child labor, which Sam expects to, quote, blow the vote out of the water. Sam speaks with the First Lady, who negotiates for the withdrawal of the rider. The First Lady reveals who leaked her preference, and the Bartletts have what they call their first Oval Office fight, but they quickly make up. The White House has received death threats and other hate mail from white supremacists about the relationship between Zoe and Charlie, who argue about their plans for Friday night. Later, Charlie shows up at Zoe's dorm room with flowers, other gifts, and an apology.
Okay. So, let me start here. What is your opinion on the Federal Reserve and the chairman of the Federal Reserve as it relates to monetary policy?
I don't know. I kept reading the name. So I'm watching the episode and I kept having to pause it and say, who's the guy who died? Why do we care? He's the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. What is his job? I don't know, but it's so important that they...
Do you want me to explain why it's important?
Yes, because
it's a very significant position. The two biggest positions probably to the economy of the United States at any one time are the president and the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Essentially, the Federal Reserve is the national bank, which is supposed to be a solitary unit that exists outside of the presidency that controls the monetary policy for the United States. And the chairman of that sits and basically controls the Board of Governors, which is controlled by a bunch of regional voting heads, and they control the interest rates at which the government loans out money. So whenever your interest rates go up on your mortgage or your savings loans or whatever else, it's differentiated or controlled by how much the government is willing to sell treasury bonds, essentially.
So he's the head of the national bank.
Correct.
Why can't we have a simpler title? Because that title just goes on and on and on.
Because most people who have to learn about the Federal Reserve are people that are actually interested in learning about the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and not just a throwaway of a TV show episode here. But I can name multiple Federal Reserve chairmen, including Jerome Powell, the current one. And we used to have Janet Yellen. And before that, we had Ben Bernanke. And I mean, I'm just showing off now.
Yeah.
But I listened to whole episodes on monetary policy. So.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
I had no understanding of... I'm so sorry.
This is why it's directly tied in. They're constantly talking about things in connection to the stock market and the rest of it. I don't think the chairman of the Federal Reserve dying would have anything more than a monetary blip. And for an economist, personally, they didn't need to take it and do it in one day. That's an outdated way of thinking. And for Bartlett, who has a economics degree, he's a world-class trained economist who I believe was trained at the London School of Economics. I might have that wrong. But anyway, that he's an economist, he would know that the one-day trends of whatever else in the market fluctuations are one-day fluctuations, and it goes up and it goes down, and it does whatever it's going to do, and you're not going to necessarily control for all of that. And that's why I think that the stock market as a barometer of what the economy is just so stupid. Although as we've continued to put more into 401ks and mutual funds, and we have retail investors and all of the other things, it's a larger barometer of where the economy is at, but over-indexing in certain tech stocks right now. And so even back in 2000, they would have been over-indexing on the dot-com bubble, and that would have been a much bigger effect on where things were at in the moment that this episode released than whether the Fed Reserve chairman died and the monetary policy, because the monetary policy was going to stay basically the same.
Okay.
So you didn't really need to know the ins and out of monetary policy, but I figured it was a way of catching you off guard to start here.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Now, here's my secondary question. In a relationship, fighting good or bad?
I don't think it's necessarily bad. It depends on what you are fighting about or having a disagreement about, right? So if we're asking, is this fight between the Bartletts a good or bad thing, I think it's pretty clear that there's obviously the fight is over miscommunication and kind of missing each other in terms of...
I wouldn't say they're miscommunicating. I think they're communicating. They're just not directly communicating, and they're doing it in this really passive-aggressive...
That's miscommunication.
Okay.
Right?
If you say so.
Because it's not direct. Direct communication, they are not having a fight over direct communication. They are having a fight over miscommunication because they are going around it and aren't just talking to each other. Right?
They're getting the messages from each other. I wouldn't say that's miscommunication, but... See, I'm a proponent that fighting is good. Conflict is good in most relationships, as long as you're not doing it in a hurtful way. If you're arguing about passionate values or how you communicate or whatever else, people let and store stuff up a little bit too much for my taste and try and be polite, or they try and be nice instead of necessarily working on things constructively. And conflict is just a natural portion of life. You have to have conflict in order to resolve differences.
Right.
It's just as long as you don't make it, and I hate to put it, it's not personal. Well, of course it's personal. I mean, that's why you got angry in the first place. But as long as you don't make the attacks personal and limit it to what you're trying to fight about so that it can come to a constructive resolution, I think it's all healthy. And I think that the way that they fight here is actually a fairly constructive elevation of a fight in a relationship that you don't often see portrayed outwardly. Normally in a political situation, the wife just stands by and supports the husband. And it's not that like she has her own agenda or she has things that she wants to do. So actually kind of calling her out in the evolution of this character and showing her vulnerability as well, I would say is actually a courageous step on the part of the show for a character that they've really been building up as like the emotional support and strength of Bartlett, to say that she has her own foibles too.
Well, and that's kind of what they end up talking about in their fight, right? That your staff is fighting with my staff, whichever side we're on, right? And that they need to be able to coexist, but is your staff fighting with my staff because our staffs are at cross purposes? We shouldn't be at cross purposes. We're on the same team, right? So that's really where the miscommunication is coming from, right? Fundamentally, the two staffs are contributing to the misunderstandings because they're the ones trying to be polite and not actually just say, okay, here's here's what the problem is, right? Which the Bartletts could have just done if they'd actually talked to each other. And this whole silly thing about her former boyfriend being the one that they're going to choose. I'm like, this is such a storyline that is so unnecessary and just spins everything out of control, because she says, of course I leaked this information because I want to support him. How is he going to know that I support him? And there's all of these implications of something that feels way more scandalous than it should be, unless it is building up to a true scandal, in which case, fuck that shit. I don't like these types of storylines.
No.
Okay. So then this is a waste of time.
This is a one-off type of thing.
Yeah, it's dumb. I don't like it.
Okay.
But this is also, again, this is a script written by more than Aaron Sorkin. Okay? So we are adding in this, it's ex-boyfriend time for a unnecessary bit of salaciousness. Okay? Because I can't choose him because she likes him and all of this type of stuff. It would have been more interesting if she had leaked a preference because she was supporting this guy, but because of a different type of relationship and not a former sexual relationship. And I think that always going to these sexual things it's just like lowest common denominator. And
it is, but it's like a little bit more real in, like, I've seen these fights before over stupid shit like this.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure fights
it's
like
reducing them or bringing them down to a level that I think makes them a little bit more appealing and common. And I think that's the purpose of it.
Sure. And that I can understand. And like you said, the fighting and particularly how this plays out does show it to be healthy. So I agree with that. I just wish that it wasn't sex-based. Because I think,
to be fair, and I was going to make this comment earlier on, and I guess I was just now waiting on it, but this seems like a good opportune moment. I think this is the weakest 3-episode tranche that we've had of anything we've covered up to this point, and probably will for at least this first season. We have some one-offs, we have some nothing burgers in here, we have some stuff that kind of moves the ball forward, but not really that much. There's only a couple of like really famous moments per se in here, and one is in the next episode. But really, there's 2 primary things that you could take out of this particular episode, and that's one, the fight between the two of them, and no, not the chairman of the Federal Board of Reserve, the governor's there, Federal Reserve, excuse me.
Right.
I got that wrong there for a second. But the other one is Zoe and Charlie. And that's where I was going to go next is we get a much more substantial plot line involving them and going through some further stuff. Again, with the backdrop of their relationship is clearly publicly not sitting well with certain groups. And that has become a fairly common theme as we continue to be introduced to the Secret Service and the protection detail and some other things. And it is leading you down a particular path intentionally.
Yeah. This reminds me a little bit of The Night Agent. And obviously this came first, but this whole idea of the first daughter in college and the protection that she has and her being targeted. I mean, we see it coming 1,000 miles away, right? So who knows how it's going to actually play out, but clearly...
Everyone who's watched the show already,
yes,
including myself.
Yes. So clearly that's going to be an issue. The fact that we have fully met her Secret Service agent, okay, I get it. I do like the way that... What is her name? The Secret Service agent. I already forgot. Gina, thank you. I do like that she's young and the president is a little bit like, how did you get this job? Because she volunteered for it. And they talk about that in the previous episode. But that she essentially is watching Charlie and knowing that Charlie is okay.
When it's non-editing, you can't control for the car alarms that are outside in the parking lot.
Yep. so that she's essentially watching Charlie, and she tells Charlie, I wish that Zoe would stay in and watch movies because that way I know that she is safe. And Charlie and Zoe have this argument about how they can't go, or they shouldn't be going to this event or whatever because of these death threats that are happening. And so Charlie ultimately showing up at her dorm and saying, we're going to watch videos. And then you see Gina in the background is like ecstatic as the agent, being able to be like, oh my God, they're going to stay in. And of course, then it's super dirty because she's like, what's her name? School bags or whatever is in for the night. Book bag. Thank you. And I'm like, all right.
Well, I mean, even Mrs. Bartland says 20 minutes and there's going to be a sock on the door.
Correct. Because me in my pre-code era with film pick up on all of the dirty little signs for when people are going to have sex. So it's that little thing is interesting enough. Let me also add one extra layer in here. Okay. I think part of the resolution of this particular plot line has to do with Danny giving advice. And I wanted to ask you about that because you've been critical of the Danny character as we've gone through this for maybe not showing much outside of the relationship. And I think he's been called into question a couple of times for his journalistic integrity. It continues to be, and I think in the next batch of episodes, it will come out even further as there's kind of more of this conflict between him and CJ and the rest of it. But he also shows some fairly sage advice, as he even puts it, for Charlie in this moment. And somebody that Charlie, as I wouldn't say peer, but maybe a semi-fatherly figure, because we know his mom's gone. We assume his dad's long gone because they never mention him throughout the history of the show. And that's unfortunate, but that he doesn't really have a lot of other figures outside of maybe Bartlett, which does show itself at some point in time, to look up to as kind of a male role model. And to offer that advice here, I wondered how you took that as you're continuing to develop this relationship that's complicated, obviously, by the actor portraying this, but additionally beyond because that. Actively right now he is in headlines and I have to try to ignore them. So I've actually seen things about Timothy Busfield and have been like, swipe away, because I do not want it to influence stuff. So actually the only note that I wrote down for this episode is Danny giving advice to Charlie, because that's the one thing that I wanted to make sure that I remembered specifically. And I think it was surprising, and I did actually really like it. And yeah, he's taking on sort of this fatherly or older brother sort of role. And I think that part of what makes that relationship interesting is actually because both of them are outsiders, right? Both of them are working in the White House, but also not, right? Charlie, as a complete outsider, he's showing up to be a dishwasher or whatever it was that he was going to do. And now all of a sudden he's the body man. And Danny is there, but he's a reporter. So he's not part of the inner circle, but he's part of the inner circle, but he's not. He's obviously desperately in love with CJ, which I love. But also in this episode, they are at odds, or things don't feel good. They're not smooching. He's trying to reach out and she keeps brushing him off. So things are tense between them. And so this, other than his flirting with CJ, which I think is really cute, him giving this advice to Charlie, I think humanizes him in a way that we haven't quite seen yet, other than him being horny for CJ, right? That he has something else going on that is informing who his character is. And it's not just, I want a story and I want a kiss, right? That it's this, I don't benefit in any way from this relationship. I am giving advice. He's essentially giving Charlie the advice that he needs himself, right? So yeah, it's the one part of this episode that I actually really liked. and wanted to focus on, and thought that's the best part of the episode for me, is that exchange between the two of them.
All right, episode 18.
All right.
Let's see if we can do this one.
Okay. 6 Meetings Before Lunch, directed by Clark Johnson, directed by Aaron Sorkin. No, written by Aaron Sorkin. Air date of April 5th, 2000. So, the Senate confirms President Bartlett's nomination of Judge Mendoza to the Supreme Court, and this prompts the West Wing staff to celebrate and CJ to lip sync to The Jackal. I didn't know that was a song, by the way. The next day, however, ushers in a myriad of problems that bring the senior staff quickly back to earth. Zoe attends a frat party, which was the location of a Metro Police drug bust and subsequent arrest of the son of a major fundraiser for the Democrats after her departure. A reporter for a conservative newspaper tries to cause problems, while CJ and others try to minimize it as a non-story. This becomes more of a struggle when CJ discovers that Zoe did not tell her the whole truth. You seeing me editing in the middle.
Yes, in real time.
Yes, because it needs to happen. CJ's morning meetings are with Charlie, Danny, Zoe, Gina, Sam, and the president. Mallory, Leo's daughter, quarrels with Sam about school vouchers. Mandy asks Toby for help in getting a replacement panda from the Chinese government and gets him to help her to cause pain for Josh. That's a super awkward sentence. Meanwhile, due to an objection by a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Josh has a long and vigorous discussion about reparations of $1.7 trillion for slavery with a candidate for an appointment to the post of the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights.
Okay.
It's a lot.
So my first question was going to be, do you have any idea what the Jackal is? But now I'll just be able to ask you generally, because I didn't know about this song either. It's a very famous moment in the history of the show. It's talked about on multiple seasons going forward. What did you think?
Okay, because I didn't know what this song was, it felt like this thing that they used to do in the early mid 90s, where you would have white people rapping and they would try to do all kinds of marketing, and it was very awkward, and, to use the parlance of the current day, super cringy. And I get that we're supposed to be like, yay, CJ's coming out of her shell, but they clearly couldn't spend the money on a more recognizable song. I didn't like it.
Okay.
Right. I like it as a signal that CJ is not uptight.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is very dated. And so I kept thinking, like,
That's
what
fair.
song would I want her to be doing so that I would have more buy-in?
This is a potential blind spot for me that you've identified as far as cultural appropriation, which I hadn't necessarily considered it through that lens. And so, to me, it worked, but, like, it also, for this reference point that they go back to, like, it's kind of like, okay, she lip sync.
Right. She's not singing it herself and demonstrating any sort of skill. She's just lip syncing, and it's a rap, and it's
like, what's the big deal?
It's not, again, people were like, we're going to watch her do this. And I'm like, okay, cool. The build up. All right, let's go watch it. Can't wait. Can't wait.
To be fair, when you're blowing off steam and you've been in the middle of a campaign and tensions are high, things have been done before. Let me just say, I did something similar after the 2012 re-elect when they called it. Everybody told me to go outside, and I did something very particular that was a me thing in that moment. And it would be very dated 2012 right now if I informed the audience of what that exactly was.
Are you going to tell me later?
I could tell you now, but...
Yeah, tell me now. Tell us now. Tell the audience right now.
Oh, this was the days when I was the Lord of the Dance. I memorized, and because I also went for Halloween as this, I was one of the first people to be on the whole Psy and Gangnam Style. And so I did the Gangnam Style out in the parking lot with everybody circled up.
Like the sideways dance and everything?
Oh. With me getting all up, like, pantomiming getting in the ass crack? Yeah. I did the whole thing.
Of this?
I think, well, there are many videos floating around the internet from my college days of me dancing to Michael Jackson or Gangnam Style or any number of things. In fact, I think because I didn't go to public school for my first 10 years, I went to parochial school. My first taste of public school and notoriety was I went to a volleyball game, and in the top row or whatever, I got into a dance-off with somebody who then, that became like their favorite memory of their senior year was one of the volleyball players. She specifically called me out and said, watching that dance-off with Tom Duncan, it was named, it wasn't just like a general reference, was their favorite moment of the year. So, yeah, it was a thing.
The Tom Duncan lore deepens. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
See, I think if we had seen CJ performing the Jackal, like karaoke or something like that, I would have more buy-in. Like, for example, I'm of a certain age and therefore I can perform Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice in its entirety, and it's kind of silly and ridiculous, but like, people might be a little bit impressed and laugh about it because it's absolutely the most ridiculous song ever. And all right, stop, collaborate, and listen. Ice is back with a brand new invention. Something grabs a hold of me tightly, flows like a harpoon daily and nightly. Will it ever stop? Yo, I don't know. Okay.
Word to your mother.
But that is me doing the William Shatner version of Robert Van Winkle, also known as Vanilla Ice, doing Ice Ice Baby. So yeah, the Jackal. Didn't land for me.
We can move on. So the Zoe part of this, you know, again, we get a continuing run of they're escalating the whole protection detail, the white supremacy angle, her and Charlie being involved, that is clearly leading somewhere. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep.
So the two more important ones where there's some actual substance to what's going on in this particular episode, especially because it is an Aaron Sorkin solo written episode, is the reparations argument, which that's substantive. I think there is a lot to be said there. And he goes through a lot of exposition to get us to where we're having an actual conversation on the issue. And then the school vouchers argument. So as a, let's say, critical person on the Mallory and Sam relationship and that, did you care for this plotline or where this went at all?
Okay, so I don't like this arc with them. I find it incredibly frustrating. Mallory is another annoying character. She is literally just Mandy number 2. And and we're supposed to care about her because she's Leo's daughter, but like I feel like Leo would have raised somebody who's like just better at life than she is, and who's not so annoying. And I don't like her relationship with her father. I don't know.
So you really must not have liked this episode because Mallory and Mandy are two like big important plot lines in this whole thing with the panda as well, which I wasn't even going to really bring up because it's kind of just dumb.
Mandy, a complete waste of space. Nothing's going on. Everybody's just quiet. You know those memes where they say nobody and like nothing's there? And then, like, Mandy crashes in through a wall, and she's like, let's get a panda! What are you talking about? And then all of the names that they have for the thing talking about
Ying Ying and Lum Lum
and Sing Sing, but it's spelled with an H, and no.
Okay.
And then, yes, Mallory is basically that version. Let's just move on then. You're frustrated. No. You don't care. You know, I'm not going to belabor it. But the public policy conversation, aside from me being annoyed with Mallory for, I would say, superficial reasons, she just rubs me the wrong way. The conversation that she has with Sam about the school vouchers and the fact that she is upset at him about his viewpoint is basically, for me, all I would need to know about somebody that I would say I don't want to date them or I don't want to be friends with them. Not because we have a disagreement on policy, but because she is so pig-headed and stubborn and thinks that this is a reason why they shouldn't date, and why she's not going to give him a date because he thinks that vouchers might be a good idea. He goes, his little speech, public education, or he's playing devil's advocate, right? Public education has been a public policy disaster for around 40 years. And this was 30 years ago. So now we're talking about, this is 70 years. He's talking about how it's been a complete disaster. We've already talked about it at the beginning of the show. So I liked him giving this little speech, but her freaking out at him, even though he's playing devil's advocate, is a clear indication that people, especially right now, should be paying attention to. Does that make sense?
I'm trying to think about how to express my feelings of this. When you know what the actual reveal is at the end, and that he could have substantively just said and like revealed it much earlier on and saved us all the headache, like, I get it, but it is kind of like a nothing plot line, because in the end there's absolutely nothing behind it, because that's not actually his position.
Correct.
But that makes me like Sam more, because I'm often the guy that's so smart that I can take the other position and troll the shit out of everybody else, which is why when I did constitutional law in undergrad, and it was right around like a whole mess of like really charged political cases, I'd often take the Scalia role, knowing nobody else in the class would, and I would just troll the shit out of everybody else, because I'm smarter than most of them.
I can't look at you right now because I'm going to start laughing and blushing. So, yes, I like that he played devil's advocate and essentially reveals that Mallory is a poop face. Okay? Stop it! So, for me, it solidified that I don't like her as a character for legitimate reasons, and not just superficial reasons that she has an annoying voice. That if that was something that happened in real life, I would be like, you're the type of person who's gonna stop being friends with people because of their political affiliations, because you literally cannot handle anybody having a difference of opinion, right?
So I think this is her last hurrah as a primary character. She does, I think, 2 drop-ins after this, but it's like she has no substantive plot line beyond this episode, I think.
Okay, good.
And we're almost at the end of the rope. I think Mandy has a couple things more, but nothing significant. And by season 2, both of them are basically written out and left in the trash.
It literally, Mandy is dropped in.
Yeah.
It has like, no bearing on anything else.
We get less of Mandy. We get less of Mallory. We get less of Zoe in season 2. And we start leaning much heavier into CJ and Abby and Donna as the 3 primary women to invest in. For if and when we get to season 2.
Right, which I am not allowed to watch yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yet being the operative word.
Correct. So, Yeah, the Zoe plotline with the drug bust feels weird.
It's just another moment to emphasize the Secret Service and to continue to escalate and build up the access, and then her relationship with Charlie and all of these other superfluous things. I mean, yes, there is a little bit to be said about the child of the president and reporters and all the other things, but really, in the end, it's more about the protection side of it, and then it's about how CJ deals with it, and then that she has to have that confrontation with Bartlett in the office.
Right, exactly.
So, it's dropping lines, which is why I can see why Sorkin wrote this. This is putting a lot of chum into the water for stuff that comes up after the fact.
Right. I don't think that this is his tightest written episode, but it's clear that it's just him, even when we have stupid Mandy and Mallory. The reparations storyline is the most interesting portion of the entire episode. You obviously cannot spend an entire hour on it. It would just be way too much. But the conversation that happens between Josh and the candidate for the assistant attorney general for civil rights is really, really interesting. Josh essentially is being the audience avatar, right? And asking questions and explain this to me and how does this work and all of that type of stuff. I thought it was really interesting. Whether or not I agree with the concept of reparations, it's intense.
I think that I'm open to a conversation about it. Obviously, I don't think you're going to be able to. First, you're not going to be spending $1.7 trillion on that, especially in 2000 when that was a much bigger astronomical number. But right now, that's low. That's more, $200 billion more than what is the proposed budget of the military on a yearly basis. So it's an astronomical number that no one would ever get to. So it would be and it would be apportioned over time. The reason that the number is as large as it is it's taking into effect basically almost 100 years of indentured servitude, which adds up quickly depending on the actual population numbers and the rest of it as that goes. And frankly, even 40 acres and a mule would not have covered over all of the people. Like, it wouldn't have provided reparations to slaves out in the western portion of the South, Texas and Arkansas and Louisiana and such. You're talking a very limited subsection of that. And I know that there are going to be people that we need to spend more money on it. Okay, fine, whatever. Budgets are priorities, and you're clearly identifying where you want yours. That's a difference of opinion. I'm at least open to having the conversation. I find this to be an engaging topic, but this is where I'm conflicted, and I guess that gets into a larger issue. For being a liberal, I'm against affirmative action, and it's because I feel that it's no longer meritorious. And it's actually doing a disservice to the people who are worthy of being in certain positions. When you go from a emphasis on DEI to having quotas, and you have to meet certain target goals, I understand and recognize that to a degree you have to introduce some of that to get at least the ball rolling, because otherwise you wouldn't have other opportunities. And sometimes it takes a concerted effort to break that initial barrier. But after a certain point, you have to let things stand on its own. And that's the part where I feel like my party sometimes has gotten away from the intended idea of it. Because, and for one reason, I'll say this, this is something that I've been very outspoken about on multiple publications. The nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson. By all accounts, brilliant jurist, completely qualified, but everybody will think of her as a token justice for the rest of her career because the president made a promise early on that it was going to be a black woman that he was going to nominate. And so that's all anybody will ever see, instead of just saying, I'll nominate the most deserving candidate. And so it makes her nomination and anything that she does have this tinge of undercut where everybody just thinks that she didn't earn it. And that's the part that I vehemently disagree with everybody who thinks that DEI. Most of the time, the people that are in the positions, yeah, they might be quote-unquote DEI because they fit a certain standard, but they also might have been deserving to be there in the first place. And nobody has really considered that.
Well, right, and I think that it taints the intention, right? So I think that the era of affirmative action is over, and over in terms of usefulness, and the era of DEI is now becoming incredibly controversial for the reasons that partly because of the reasons that you say. This is one of the things that people, like when Hillary Clinton was running, right, that people were only going to vote for her because she was a woman and for no other reason. And as a woman, being told that I had to vote for her because of her genitalia was very strange to me, and thinking, but we should be voting on who we think is the best person for the job, and it should not be what gender somebody is, all of that type of stuff. And there's always kinds of ways to figure out where you fall on party lines, all of that type of stuff. But it should not be based on someone's skin color or these immutable things that they cannot control, right?
I think we've talked about it before. I have been told that as a evangelical, middle-class white male, that, and especially in a high professional position, that there should be no way that I vote liberal because I'd be voting against my interests. Well, fuck off. Like, I don't identify with groups so that I can be a particular voting body.
Right.
Now,
well, and here, right. Mm-hmm.
Particular issues I can break with because of a particular thing. That's why, just because the Democrats ended up being the party that was more progressive on, let's say, LGBTQ issues, does not require everybody in the LGBTQ community to vote on that one thing. There are other parts to being a human, being an American, being a citizen, that may be of more importance and value to you than that one thing. And I don't like one party or one issue voters to begin with, because there's just simply more available, and I find it to be reductionary. People just, they're looking for the comfort of the simplicity of, well, whether you stand for this one thing or not, that's what I'm going to vote on. Taxes or guns or LGBTQ or DEI or whatever else. And it then becomes the stand-in or the representation of any number of things. But, well, that's me being an elitist and not being critical of the fact that people don't look into it nearly as much as I do. But that's...
And identity politics is hard, right? Because when we equate who we are with these really, really stringent definitions and parameters and political guidelines, it doesn't leave any room for error. And we err all the time because to err is human. And we take away our humanity when we expect people to only do X, Y, Z because they look this way or they have this job or whatever it is. When we were talking about the death penalty, was that last episode or a couple episodes, whatever it was, and talking
I think
about
it was the last episode,
yeah, that the death penalty is not something that that falls on party lines in the way that, say, like abortion has a pretty distinct separation, right?
Sure.
Death penalty doesn't, because there's other things that people consider when they are taking into account whether or not they support capital punishment or don't support capital punishment. And there's so many more things that feed into it. And people on both sides are going to absolutely scream that the other side is wrong, but those aren't party sides. Those are, we believe that this is good and we believe that this is bad. And so it's one of the few things where people don't get caught up necessarily in the identity politics or the labels or the party stuff, because it defies those types of categories. Sometimes I wish that was more the way that it would be across the board. It can't. We've crossed over into this line that we have now. And so when you're talking about something like Ketanji Brown, and are we allowing, I don't know if that's the right word. Are we giving someone the opportunity to prove themselves as being absolutely worthy? I think you phrased it very, very well. There's always going to be this asterisk. There's always going to be this question. And so that has done her and the country a disservice, because it's kind of like just an insidious little rumor, right? And once it's out there, it's Pandora's box. You can't get it back in. And so...
Well, let me clarify a little bit.
Yeah.
I find that we do that as a broad brush.
Sure.
Because anytime there's a diversity candidate in like a Fortune 500 CEO job or on a Fortune 500 board, that they're only there because of like a tokenism. And that I find to be just utterly offensive, because most of the time they had to work 3 times harder than anybody else to probably get there and break through some stuff. And even with a few extra advantages, they still probably didn't get there most of the time. So the people that are there, I find to be probably more deserving. What I'm saying is in this one particular instance, because there was an explicit promise made.
That's right. I'm saying
and he did the same thing with Kamala in picking his vice president, who again had to be a woman of color. Like, why put those parameters on yourself?
Right.
Like, if you were going to do it, that's fine. But then, like, do it because she's the right person for the job, not because she fit a box.
But also the stupidity of making the statement, right?
Oh, yeah.
If he had just chosen Kamala
communications
Harris
was never Joe Biden's strong suit, and it continues to be a very limiting factor, which... Say what you want. I think as an administrator and capability, he was better than a lot of people give him credit for. But as a communicator, he is exactly what everyone thought he was.
Right.
And he didn't lean into his abject strengths, which is his ability to be vulnerable and to communicate with people at an honest level, because that's not where politics is often won. And if he had shown more of the nurturing father side that he clearly has, he would have been a much better communicator. But that was just never what he wanted to do.
Right. And again, the problem was making the statements beforehand. Right. Not that those choices were made. Even if he still only made those choices because of those parameters, never saying it out loud means there's no fodder, right? And
as someone who's met him in person, the amount of people that will tell you the individual anecdotal story of meeting him and running into him, or him remembering small tidbits of like a personal tragedy or something and being able to relate to you on a personal level, on an individualized level, are numerous. Like you walk to a lot of random staffers that have been around for a couple of decades, and there are plenty of Papa Joe or Uncle Joe stories. But his ability to relate that to a broader mass audience and really kind of like, you know what? My son died, my wife died, my other son got killed, after serving his country. I've had a lot of tragedy in my life, and let me use this as a relatability tool that says I'm going to be the healer in chief for a bit, and instead just kind of hid and let people define what his presidency was. That's the part that I would criticize, because I think he was a lot better than people will ever give him credit for, and I think he got pigeonholed into kind of a Lyndon Johnson era where I think history will be kinder to him over time than we are right now, which are so closely related to the situation and how badly he kind of fucked up the end to give us another 4 years of Trump.
if he had run immediately after, right off of being vice president, and I understand why he did not,
sure,
right? Losing his son, all of these things. He's grieving. But if he had run right then, it would have been the easiest. It's so clear to me that he would have won in a landslide. Mm-hmm. And we would be in a vastly different position now. Now, there's no point in going, I wish, but the person that he was at that point, very, very different from the person he was when he finally did actually run. And he shouldn't have run because he needed to deal with his family, but he could have had it.
To be fair, if it didn't happen then, it would have happened at a later time and place. I think as much as I dislike the current administration and the current president, and I'm vocally opposed in many capacities for it, I think it is a necessary problem that America had to face and look itself in the mirror and really take a hard look of self-reflection at who we are, what we want, and how the world has evolved, because we've become rudderless in the last 20 years of what do we want this, because we thought we were going to be post-racial, and then we weren't. And we thought we were going to be somewhat, democracy has basically expanded everywhere. And then China started recoiling, and we had more hardline stuff with Iran, and Putin didn't end up being a Democratic candidate, and all of a sudden he's invading other countries. And so you keep running through the list of stuff where we thought we had moved past a certain barrier, and we clearly weren't. Meanwhile, everybody in the country is looking for better solutions, and liberalism doesn't really have much to offer because we've gotten kind of to a certain point where everybody's just looking around and saying, well, we can't really progress that much further than everybody's ready for. Nobody really wants these changes, and the institutions that we have aren't really working that well. So do you just want to hold the status quo that's really not working, or not? So even if it didn't happen in 2016 and it happens in 2020 and we don't have COVID and we, any number of things you put back in the box, it's eventually a reckoning that America was going to have to go through, whether or not he was elected then, or if he would have been the one representing it. We would have gotten somebody else that would have come to the fore that would have represented all of this. And so there's a part of me that I thought it was over in 2020. I sobbed when I thought that election was done. But then we had January 6th, and we had all of the other stuff that came after it, and stuff for me happens the way it should, because we think of time as this linear thing where there's reactions happening, and if true associations of time and dimension are accepted, it means everything in the future that will happen has already happened, because everything's happening simultaneously. So the beginning of this show and the end of this show, in a metaphysical sense, have already happened. We're just experiencing them through the space of a linear progression. This was always going to happen, and so my thoughts of where we're necessarily going to be or the rest of it, some people accept that as like a nihilistic version of it.
Okay. That
there's no point in doing anything because everything's already decided. I don't take that tact. But I'm also saying that me getting upset over stuff that I think probably needed to happen because that's the course of events and that's the natural outcome of things, that's not also to say that I think anybody should do nothing either.
Right.
Because you don't know what your actions may behoove in the future, and the actions that you feel that you should be taking are probably the ones that you should.
Right. Well, and I think essentially, I think what you're saying is the pendulum kind of had to swing in one direction, and it has to go this far before it can swing back. And we were overdue for this kind of, this isn't exactly what I mean, but course correction, right? Or that I think that a lot of people are thinking about.
We had to break liberal complacency. Mm-hmm. And liberal with a small L again. Like the liberal democracy complacency of what the world was and the world order and this rules and the process and the rest of it. And we needed to go through that as somewhat of a reformation to whatever the evolution is of what's next. And you only get that through major change or conflict through a change agent. Now, it comes in one particular orange package, but okay, if it wasn't him, it was going to be somebody else.
True. And, well, we're
far afield from the show. I'll mention that.
True. And you and I are not going to live long enough to be able to see how future generations are going to refer to right now. As you said, like, you think that future is going to be kinder to Joe Biden than they are right now. I agree with you, but it will also be really interesting to see how right now bears up in the future and how people will view this era and all of the controversy. Is it going to be great, or is it going to be a stain? And we don't get to decide any of that. No matter what we do right now, that's all going to be decided 50 years from now, 60, 100 years from now. We're never going to know what ultimately the annals of history are going to say about it. So it feels weird to live in it and feel like it's the end of the world, whichever side you're on, and then we're never going to actually know.
I made this comparison at the time, and I think it's actually worked out pretty historically well. Maybe not like an exact parallel, but I said that Obama was Kennedy, and Biden was Lyndon Johnson, and Trump was Dick Nixon, which by that definition then, by the time it's his second term and it's scandal-ridden and all of this other stuff's going on and he gets more erratic and everything completely unravels out from under him, that would mean that the current administrator, the current president, would be removed either or would not finish out his term. He would either resign, be removed, or die and not finish out his term. And we're going to get saddled with, well, yeah, the vice president, which theoretically then leads to a Jimmy Carter-like figure, which great humanitarian, poor president.
And most people would agree, yes, great humanitarian and a mere blip on the way to Reagan. And some people think that he's one of the best of all time. And some people, if you ask my mom, he is a blight on humanity. But that's also because she lived under his reign for 16 years because he was the governor of California as well.
Yeah. All right. So that leaves us with only a couple of small duties here left. We already said I think this is the weakest of the tranche that we've covered to this point. I would say from about episode, let's say, 16 is probably about right. Up and through the end of the season, it kind of kicks off this last portion. Although you could make a very substantial argument that 17 through 22 is probably the last real kick. But you're going to start to see some resolution of some plot lines that were dropped in this tranche as early as the next episode, which is a very famous episode in the history of the show. And you're going to slowly get some other characters thrown in here. 20 is going to have a new character that I think you're going to enjoy. And so we're going to get some additional stuff here. The last, I think all three, yes. 20, 21, and 22 are all solo written by Sorkin.
Okay.
And it kind of ramps it into the exact spot where he wants it to go to end this season.
Okay.
Now, that being said, we got to rank these. So
here's my thought. The third episode to the 6 meetings is going to have to be last because there's too many parts that I didn't like.
That's fair.
So, like Mallory and Mandy, that's too much crap in one episode. So it needs.
I was going to say 16 is the top by default, even though I don't think it's like a great episode. It's the best of the three that we have here. And
Correct.
Then I would say 17 and 18 are a step below and tied down there.
Right. Well, and here's the thing is that In the second one, Danny giving advice to Charlie, I liked that part. The rest of it was, it's fine. I didn't have any major objections. Don't love it, but it was fine.
It's kind of a bridge episode.
Aggressively fine. Okay. And then the airplane one has more things that I was interested in, even though I do think it was a little bit sloppy here and there. But again, recognizing that this is Aaron Sorkin, this also has when they're at the party and CJ is constantly running off and saying, pretend that you're talking to me, right? So it's the repetition of a specific phrase that I think is one of Sorkin's hallmarks, right? That
sure.
You will have the same thing repeated over an episode as sort of a call and response type of thing. So yeah, it would definitely be, and I think order of ranking is really an order of appearance for these ones. And I think overall, the reparation stuff out of everything is the most interesting
policy
concept.
Discussion.
Correct. But that's the weakest episode because it's this much of other crap.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wondered if we were going to get to the full hour because this was kind of a weak set of episodes, and we went longer than the last two episodes.
Shut up, we did not.
Yeah, by 15 minutes.
Yeah, because
almost 20 minutes over the last episode, so.
You could take out our whole discussion about the presidents.
Well, you could take out my rants for the first, 11 minutes.
Also that. I feel like I didn't go off into... No, I contributed a lot.
You contributed, but it was a lot more of me this episode. But since you're technically in the hosting chair, I'll let you say goodnight, Gracie.
Oh, good night, Gracie.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.